Hey, welcome to Kamloops Alliance 14 Days of Prayer. My name's Diane. In unusual times like this, we are inundated with new vocabulary words. Coronavirus, social distancing, and flattening the curve they're all new scientific terms that have been integrated into my everyday conversation. I'd never heard of any of it 90 days ago. So here's another scientific term, the second law of thermodynamics. We don't really think or talk about it much, but we see it play out every day. This scientific law says that the natural tendency of any isolated system is to degenerate into a more disordered state. In very unscientific terms, I would say if we play out the movie to the end of the universe, we can predict it's going to end in chaos. You've experienced this firsthand in your garden. Stop tending your garden for a couple of weeks and you go out one day and it has sprouted a whole new row of potatoes, right? No. It's sprouted a disorderly scattering of weeds, your roses are covered in aphids, and the deer have eaten your beet tops right to the ground. Frankly, those of us over the age of 50 certainly begin to experience the chaos of degeneration in our joints and our skin in a very real way. I confess, none of this sounds particularly hopeful in human terms. But God, the author of the universe, put people on earth for the purpose of putting things together. The second law of thermodynamics says, left to its own natural tendencies, chaos ensues. This does not factor in human intervention or divine activity. God gives talent to people to build bridges and cities and roads with the work of their hands, and He gives ideas for people to write poetry and melodies and constitutions. He gives some the ability to look through microscopes and the patience to trial disease-fighting medicine. And to some, He gave a keen eye for color and composition to carve statues and put paint onto canvas, and we all admire it out of a sense of wonder when we ourselves could not produce it. The book of Genesis gives us clarity on God's purpose for people. God says in Genesis 2:15 that Adam and Eve were living in the garden to tend it and watch over it. Even before sin and the second law of thermodynamics came into play and made tending and producing much harder than God ever intended, the good work of people was to make things flourish. One of the most important tools God has given for us for the purpose of flourishing is prayer. Prayer is for the purpose of rebuilding, remaking, and healing that which has fallen down. The power of prayer is the answer to the second law of thermodynamics. Prayer remakes undoing. In the Old Testament book of Daniel, we read about a man living in exile from his own country. He cannot practice his religion freely, and yet the book is full of stories of Daniel's prayers remaking man-made chaos into moments resulting in undeniable displays of God's awesome power. In this time of what feels like global chaos, some of which is for sure man-made, our work of leveraging prayer for the purpose of remaking the world becomes evident. In your prayer prompts today, I'm going to ask you to consider what kind of prayer God's calling you to. Is it rebuilding? Nehemiah was asked by God to rebuild a wall. There will be plenty of rebuilding to do in our economy once we're able to move and travel freely again, and we can pray now for the seeds of that rebuilding to be planted. Is it healing? There are those that are very ill from COVID-19 or something else. Elijah was asked to pray and heal a widow's son. We can pray for the ill right now. Is it remaking? There are troubled relationships that need remaking and redoing. We can pray into broken relationships for reconciliation and forgiveness and humility. Doing a review on the kinds of prayers God's people prayed in the Bible is revealing. There are prayers for those going into battle. There are prayers of infertile mothers desperate for children. There are prayers of praise and dedication and confession. There are prayers of contrition, prayers of pleading, and prayers of gratitude. Prayers for miracles and prayers for peace. I think of prayer kind of like a plow. How is God asking you to put your hand to the plow and put your prayer time to work for the reordering and flourishing of the universe? In today's downloadable document, you'll find some scripture and prompts to help you enter into remaking the undoing. Thanks for joining us today.